Before we get into today's project, I just want to make a friendly little reminder to anyone who's considering restoring their own player piano. You're out of your mind, by the way. Welcome to the club. Get the book. Well, actually, books. Both Player Piano Servicing and Rebuilding and Piano Servicing, Tuning, and Rebuilding by Art Reblitz are must-have guides. In my opinion, they're just as important as a screwdriver. There are multiple editions of the Piano Servicing, Tuning, and Rebuilding book. The second or third is more than enough. Get them and read them till your eyes bleed. All right, let's do some stuff. Now that the new strings are on the piano and the majority of the action repairs have been done, it desperately needs to be tuned. And even though we've had multiple blizzards this month, no, I'm not talking cool treats. I'm talking a real dumper here. I don't think I've ever seen this much snow in my backyard before. Thankfully, my friend and colleague Steve Meisner is able to help me out with that. Steve came back from 4 hours away on the day of a blizzard to help tune the piano. He's actually tuned it, I think, 7 times now. I'm so thankful Steve is willing to come out and help with this project. Of course, he helped with the restringing, and I'm depending on him and his tuning skills to help bring this instrument back to life. I met Steve in 2015 at one of his piano exhibitions. Steve collects historic keyboard instruments, mainly instruments that are pre-1900s. Get him! Get him!
Hey, here, little guy. You should get the Flaming Piano Roll Award. Best Supporting Actor in a docu-comedy. How's that?
And a hackumentary.
Yeah.
Steve has over 40 years of experience working on historic pianos. Thank you, Steve. I couldn't do this without you. I made a lot of good progress on the piano this week. One of the main things was regulation. Action regulating involves adjusting all of the different moving parts in a piano so they operate uniformly. Let's take a look at some of the tools I use to do this. And I'll demonstrate on my action figure. No, not G.I. Joe, just G. This is a key easing pliers. All piano keys have felt bushings both in the center and the front. These felt bushings ride against the pins that guide the keys. Sometimes these bushings or the wood behind them can swell, making the keys sluggish. So, giving them a gentle squeeze with the key easing pliers helps open them up so that they move freely. In episode 2, I replaced all of the worn bushings in these keys. For the most part, they turned out fine and I didn't have to do any adjustments, but there were a few like this one that were just a little too tight. In episode 2, I also replaced all the felt underneath the keys. Near its midpoint, each key rests on a felt balance rail punching. Because each key is cantilevered over the balance rail, changing the height of this punching changes the height of the key at the front. I can fine-tune that height by adding paper punchings of various thicknesses underneath that felt punching. More thickness means more higher. In our project piano, each key needed to be leveled individually so that they were uniform. Here's one that's pretty bad. First I tried a paper punching, or shim, that was 15 thousandths of an inch thick. Not quite. It needs a little bit more. So I removed the paper punching that I just added and replaced it with one that was 20 thousandths of an inch thick. About 60% of the keys needed to be either raised or lowered so that they were uniform, both the black and the white keys. The travel or dip of the key, how much it moves, determines whether or not the piano action will correctly go through its cycle. This key dip block helps me visualize how much each white key is moving. It's really just a small piece of wood, undoubtedly from a much larger piece of wood. Now, it's just a dip off the old block. Its thickness represents the correct amount of space underneath each white key that it should have available to travel. One way to change that available space is by adding or subtracting shims. With all the white keys at the same level, I can use the neighboring keys to represent where the key was before it traveled down. This looks really good. This one, yeah, not so much. It's going to need a little more travel. Thankfully, there were already some cardboard punchings underneath that I could remove to increase that travel. The black keys require a different tool to regulate their travel, but we'll have to save that for another video. Much better. In episode 7, I replaced all of the catcher butt leathers on the piano action, so they'll all have to be re-regulated. The catchers hold the piano hammer in place while the key is depressed after it strikes the string. This prevents it from rebounding into the string multiple times. Using this back check regulating tool and a homemade go, no-go gauge, I can regulate the back checks so that every back check in the piano action catches and holds that hammer in the same position. This is done by bending the wire that supports the back check. This one needs more of a gap, and so does this one. Bending the back check away increases that gap. Whoop, too much. Bending the back check closer closes that gap off. One of the last things to be regulated are the dampers. The dampers keep the strings from speaking when we don't want them to. We want the dampers to release from the strings when the hammer is halfway towards the strings, and we do that by regulating this damper spoon. The proximity of the damper spoon to the damper lever will determine where in the cycle the damper begins to pull away from the strings. And this gnarly tool is how I regulate that. It has an ugly shape for an ugly job. The claw at the tip of the tool engages with the damper spoon and allows me to bend that spoon either towards or away from the damper lever. In practice, this is done entirely by feel because I can't see the tip of that tool at all. When I first got this tool a few years ago and started using it, I hated it. It requires so much focus to use, but now that I've gotten the hang of it, I hate it a little less. This damper in the piano looks good. It's pulling away from the string when the hammer is halfway towards the string. Its neighbor? Yeah, not so much. Since that damper is activating late, I will bend the spoon forward or away from me towards the lever. Whoop, too much. Now it's coming on too early. I'll bend that spoon back towards me just a little. There we go. If only I could bend these spoons the good old-fashioned way, with my head. With the majority of the piano action regulation through, let's see what these three pedals are all about. The first is the damper or sustain. It pulls all the dampers away from the strings simultaneously. Without pressing the damper pedal, when a note is played, the damper will return to the string immediately after the key is released. When the damper is held down, that note will continue to speak even after the key is released. Now this middle pedal, I'd like you to guess, and if you're brave enough, guess down in the comments section while this is paused. You might just be surprised. Or wrong, you might be wrong. I know I was, until I got this all hooked back up. Okay, here goes nothing. It's the sustain! Again, I don't know why, but it is. And I'm confident that I got this right because it operates the same rod that the sustain unit for our player system does. I feel like I got a 2-pedal piano at a 3-pedal price. And the leftmost pedal is the soft pedal. It moves the hammers towards the strings so that they strike with less inertia and therefore create less volume. I was actually able to button up 2 loose ends from episode 2 this week. This playback control label has seen better days. I think it's made out of an early form of plastic. It's very brittle. I connected with a friend who has a large collection of about 40 derelict player pianos and asked him if he might have a replacement. He actually had a piano with the exact same label and said I could have the label because the piano was destined for the landfill because it had been painted blue. I guess this is why they say, I'm blue, so yeah, indeed I will die. Yeah, indeed I will die. Yeah, indeed I will die. Right? Anyway, just look at how nice that original label is. It's not broken. But of course I broke it as I was removing it. As I was removing it, it broke. Well, one thing leads to another, and I got connected with a fellow named Matt Scher. Matt worked his magic and created a clean vector version of the original label. Instead of using nasty plast, he used brass-colored aluminum, the graphics are a vinyl overlay, and all slots and holes were hand-cut by Matt. It's finished off with a polycarbonate skin which is very abrasion resistant. I'm so glad I got connected with Matt and that he was willing to take on this commission. Thank you, Matt! If you'd like to get in touch with him, I'll leave some contact information in the description of this video. This label is so important as it identifies all of the playback features on this player piano. This is like mission control. Of course, we can't yet use any of these features, but at least I could get the pump put back in the piano that I restored in episode 8. With the pump installed, I can start getting the peripheral pneumatics that the pump powers hooked up. With the bottom half of the player system all hooked up, we can test a few of the features of the player system. The first is the sustain. It can be operated manually from this button, and there's also coding in the piano rolls to do it automatically. The second is a soft bass feature. This moves the bass section of the hammers forward so they play more quietly. And there's also a soft treble, which does the same with the treble hammers, moving them forward so they don't strike as hard. Well, this piano's come a long way since episode 1 last year, but I've got a long ways to go. We still have to restore the whole top portion of the player piano. The spool box, the valves, the pneumatics that play the piano action, and figure out a bench. I think it's safe to say, yes, I have 99 problems, but the pitch ain't one. A lot of people don't realize on their grands this front section of the lid, you're supposed to keep that down, at least in inclement weather. It helps keep snow out of the dampers.